Greetings, my fellow simple sovereign thinkers of the News Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful Central Mango, South Florida. And today's date, Wednesday, August 23rd, 2017. Yes, I'm just chilling in the downtown library off of South Andrews Avenue, 106 South Andrews Avenue, which is south of Briar Boulevard. And I'm just scoping around a little bit. And I do apologize for the last episode for technical difficulties going off at the cafe. However, one thing I'm happy because I did fulfill that one area on Charlottesville. So I'm going to be doing a rest of that. And I'm just going to add one thing. I may do something later on tonight. See if I'll be, deciding. Not just doing unpredictable. So, just interesting stuff. I was actually reading an article by the Boston Globe in reference to the free speech row that happened in Boston, which was actually an anti-free speech facility. And of course, we were talking about there was the neo-Nazi white supremacists over there at the gazebo, the bandstand. There were none whatsoever. They were mainly a mixed group of folks from different political spectrum, parties, etc. And I gotta say, I am very disturbed by what happened. They left the 225-foot buffer zone, okay? And they only had was a megaphone, so you could do one that they had a barricade on 225 feet away from the bandstand. They was actually talking to themselves, which was plain damn sick. I'd like to thank Mayor Walsh, Boston's mayor, and the police commissioner Evans for admitting that they hate free speech. They are less patriotic than Van Arnold. That's right. They make Van Arnold a profound patriot. I'm not afraid to call out these folks, especially when they had the audacity of slandering them. This is Mayor Walsh himself made that statement about we don't need you here. And Evan's like, oh, it doesn't matter. People don't want to hear it anyway. You know what? That's why you bunch of treasonous parasites. You have no right to represent that historical city of Boston. And don't get me wrong, it has its issues. Alright, but there's a lot of great history, a lot of beautiful folks over there, and they're trying to say to the constituents, Boston meek, Boston's meek, we own you, you're mindless sheep. Okay, Boston meek, we own you like mindless sheep. That's what they're saying, Walsh and Evans. Alright, these parasites are just an example of governmental tyranny, completely unacceptable and null and void.
Sorry.
No problem.
Is this a swimming pool? No.
No. I think you have to be about this swimming pool. No, it's not. I don't want to get people. I get some people who walk up and ask me a question. I'm doing a show, so I've got to do it all. I had to have fun. All right, well, yeah, definitely check it out. I posted on Facebook, Twitter, and Google Plus the article from Boston Globe and the video, the 12-minute video, but there's many others in there as well in its entirety. And what was it? Joe Biggs from InfoWars actually talked about it. He was there and made that claim, and I've seen some of the footage of the videos, and he talked about the article on it. So I think they should have verified it, and it has a lot of merit. So I'm just letting you know it's a fact. All right, there's no make-up stories, anything like that. So all you folks out there that participated in that Boston free speech rally, came to fight Nazis, fascism, and all that, you've been duped and gladioed, okay, to a certain extent. When I mean gladioed, they tricked you, gave you that little mockingbird treatment. You've been mockingbird, okay? That's all. Instead of being gladioed, you've been mockingbird, but you've been duped. Tells you how much they love your freedom, which is guaranteed under your state constitution, which the mayor and the police commissioner despise. That's right. So if you don't like it, too bad. Crudely wrong that these people are freedom-loving individuals But right now, they're tyrannical chumps based on their actions. Okay, and I noticed too, Representative Steve Cohen from Tennessee, 9th District, was going, I'm going to file articles of impeachment. One of them about what happened at Charlottesville. And he's talking about because because Trump blamed both sides, they even blamed the Nazis and the Klan. So if his other counter protesters with some of his communist attributes, that's exceptional. As long as they're Nazis, they're okay. Exceptional. So kids that hate liberty, but they're not Nazis. Exceptional. That's right. And I'll tell you this. And he even talked about some of the foreign funds and all that. And you know what? It proves one thing. I did my little check on his voting record, and it's by the John Freedom Index, by the New American, which is a John Society. And people work from JBS, but look, they have a lot of facts that back it up. You can always verify it, which I do at the Library of Congress. This man's Freedom Index was 22%. He did some good stuff, like he voted on he opposed the whole military, Military Defense Appropriations Act and NDAA, and of course that includes different detention. He did oppose it, which is good, but he does support more big government centralization. He supported Common Core. So the man is not Bill of Rights friendly, okay? Even on Veterans for Firearms, he wasn't happy about that either. So he thinks that the government knows better than you guys, who are so-called may have distorted thoughts, but you don't want to own a firearm because they say so. So it's like if I have a problem, what my brewer in, he goes, you can't own a handgun, but the federal government says so. That's what Stephen Cohen is. He's one of those pro-big government, anti-freedom buffoons. And he likes to say, but he claims to be Jewish, and he talked about on the article of Peter, talking about the 6 million people, Jews that died in the Holocaust. Yeah, you haven't learned a damn thing on the Nazi Weapons Act of 1938. So you know what? You shut up. You're invalid, null and void, and that's another gyno with all due respect. And that's how I see it. But speaking of that, remember I'll tell you folks out there, if you're going to criticize, be critical, even President Trump, have merit rather than being a parrot. You got a bunch of parrots out there that can't even tie their own shoelaces. So, without further ado, let's check out here. This came out just a couple of hours ago. I tried to do it at the other facility, and it didn't really work out. And this is done by The Intercept. It's entitled "Trump's Inability to Hit His Own Deadlines is Becoming Darkly Comical." It's by David Dayen. This week, President Donald Trump announced an increase in troops in Afghanistan without giving the precise number that will be sent there or what will be doing. America's enemies must never know our plans or believe they can wait us out, Trump said in Fort Myers, Virginia. We know that Trump views the press as the enemy, so that could explain why this lack of transparency extends to the relatively mundane question of whether the administration has fulfilled deadlines for action, mandated executive orders, and memoranda. Trump himself set these deadlines, but as for now, The Intercept can confirm that only 23 have been met since Inauguration Day. For example, on August 9th, 6 different reports and assessments were due as part of the President's executive order on cybersecurity involving the participation of 13 different federal agencies. Only 3 responded to queries from The Intercept, and all of them referred us to other sources. The General Service Administration suggested direct inquiries to the Office of Management and Budget, while the Department of Defense and State referred to questions to the White House. The White House and the OMB have yet to respond. Similarly, after querying the Department of Homeland Security, is about inability to confirm the receipt of 6 different reports from the President or disclose their contents. Spokesman David Lapham will only say all these reports go to the White House. You need to check with them and on the current status and whether any of them will be made public. DHS does not plan to release any of these reports Asked whether that is a confirmation that reports exist, Lappin did not respond. Okay. Even reports completed in previous months have stalled. The State Department, for a memorandum related to the travel ban, is supposed to publish a list of immigrant and non-immigrant visa issuances monthly, served by country of insurance. Although the State Department accomplished this task in March, April, May, and June, there was no report available for July over 3 weeks after the due date. Interesting there, right? Yeah, the State Department has failed to explain to the Intercept why they haven't published this report. And all, no agency has responded to the Intercept request to confirm receipt of a report mandated by executive order or memorandum since July 16. Requests for other media outlets indicate that at least some of these reports have been delayed. Axios reported on August 4th that the Commerce Department's plan for a pipeline construction with American materials was due to the President last week, but had not been delivered. It was actually due July 23rd. The Commerce Department, which had been criticized by U.S. oil companies for potentially increasing the cost of the pipeline, had not issued a report publicly or said when it will do so. The White House has admitted delay and promised restriction on steel imports. Trump promised a decision on tariffs after receiving a Commerce Department analyst in June, but the administration has held off amid criticism from manufacturers who welcome cheap steel imports. The Commerce Department has also trouble gathering information for the steel market review, according to the Washington Post. So it's interesting there. So it looks like it's not like no genie, no magic lamp theory. But hey, as far as I'm concerned, with the cost of domestic parts, hey, we gotta go back to the fiduciary note, turn it to fiat money, and as far as I'm concerned, bring it back to the managed by the U.S. Treasury. Since that time, Trump had signed a memorandum, and the U.S. Trade Representative Limit initiated a study into Chinese intellectual property theft of U.S. companies, but this finding would only benefit the corporate treasury of the pharmaceutical, technology, and entertainment companies, most of whom either manufacture abroad or have contracts in place that would limit benefits from IP enforcement from flowing to workers. So executives at Merrick or Microsoft have a lot about Trump's America's First trade policies thus far. Steelworkers not so much. They're going to have the good and bad. The Los Angeles Times noted that Trump's January 25th executive order on border security, which called for steep up deportations, immediate construction of the border wall, and hiring 5,000 new Border Patrol agents, has not come close to that outcome. In fact, Border Patrol employment has dropped by 220. Predictably, the Departments of Justice and Homeland Security have not responded to queries about whether they completed progress report on the implemented executive order. So there are links on here to see it for yourselves. ProPublica has been unable to complete a list of Trump's deregulation teams ushered in by his executive order for the regulatory reform agenda. Despite urging from Democratic members of Congress, the White House has not released all the names of these teams with a potential conflict of interest. We know that many of them previously served as executives or lobbyists for industries agencies now oversee. The Energy Department is expected to release a study of the U.S. energy grid as part of Trump's executive order promoting energy independence, though Energy Secretary Rick Perry initially wanted to lead the study to prove that regulatory burdens that led to retirements of coal and nuclear plants threaten reliable power energy and generation. The draft report viewed by Bloomberg found that the grid operators are using technologies, standards, and practices to assure that they can continue operating grid reliably. After announcing it will be issued in July, Perry never presented the report, and last week the Sierra Club filed suit to force its release. Only actions confirmed as fulfilled on time in the past months came from the Department of Treasury. A June memorandum on Cuba policy asked the Treasury to initiate a process to adjust current regulations on transactions and with and end tourism to Cuba. Treasury Department spokesman said Unger told the Intercept that the process of developing new regulations underway, implementation and guidance expected in the coming months. So that's indescribably low bar was clear, despite the total secrecy on the progress of executive orders. Trump continues to manufacture more public deadlines, signed an executive order last week going back to promise to account for climate change and increased risks of flooding and federal infrastructure projects, which amount to effectively throwing money into an ocean flowing overseas from sea level rise. There are 3 deadlines attached to that order, including one asking the Council on Environmental Quality to provide a list of actions to modernize environmental review by September 14th. Agencies, however, continue to take loose attitude toward completing the review. Conservationists have been unnerved by an intimate review determining the fate of over 24 national monuments, only a few which have been publicly spared the potential scalebacks or elimination. This is lands we're talking about, not statues of Confederate leaders, the former is in the crosshairs, the latter just fine with Trump. But 1 week before a deadline, Interior Secretary Brian Zink lounged on a Greek Isle on what looks like a fun vacation with his wife. The review of the monuments is due Thursday, but technically it is tomorrow. The entire list of Trump executive orders and their outcomes on our inactive tracker. And it gives you the tracking, and where are you? Ah, there it is. So out of 109, 23 were met, 25 unresponsive, 3 not met. It's upcoming, so 109. So it tells you the list and all that. So that they met. So some haven't met, others have been not. Like enhancing the public safety and interior of the U.S. unresponsive. Border security, immigration, enforcement improvements, unresponsive. So it gives you a whole list and that link, something to check out. Gives you all the information. So now, like I said, my friends, this is very interesting. So it's going to be a slow process. It's not going to be anything fast or efficient. It's not going to happen overnight with a magic lamp. Yeah, you can be real critical of Trump on here as well. Going to make all these quick, fast decisions, but it doesn't really work that way. You always have to see things a lot broader, and that's why when that's when I give my article of impeachment on that, forget about it. You know, there's nothing really new, but hey, you can say what doing is more achievable. Definitely, I'm gonna make that make that handy. It is essential in what's going on. Okay, well, let's check this out here. It's from the New Eastern Outlook. It came out yesterday. This one was entitled "Identity Politics as Crisis Actors Engage in Prelude to New American Civil Wars" by Henry Kamen. As it reads here, as we all have seen as we have all seen on the news and efforts underway to renew statues and other remembrance of people who fought the losing side in the U.S. Civil War. This has attracted a lot of publicity due to racist behavior of some of the defenders of these monuments. But there is much more than this than the defense of slavery, which was equally prevalent on the winning side at one time. History is the most biased of subjects because the winner writes the official history. We have seen this wherever the U.S. has gone in recent times. Saddam's an evil dictator because he uses weapons the U.S. gave him to fight the Ayatollah. Assad's an evil Islamic dictator because he protects certain Christian groups while the Christian U.S. funds the Islamic terrorist groups who murder them, etc. So it was inevitable that sooner or later the U.S. would do this in its own history, not by academic thesis, but dictator. Facts don't go away when you ignore them, but if you can remove them remove all the physical evidence that such facts existed. This goes a long way to helping people forget. Just like in North Korea, it was created by Robert Mercer's trolls. If everything people sees expresses only one view, it is much harder to believe your own eyes, much less convince anyone else of the reality. The last curtain call of accurate history is being held across the South. Anyone below the Mason-Dixon line can tell you that the Civil War is mostly forgotten, but that is not because it never happened or has nothing to teach us. It has been forgotten because it gets in the way of the standard U.S. narrative, just like Saddam, Assad, Aristide, Osama Qasem Khadira, and many others. Hopefully the voice in the South will make Americans themselves wake up and see the world they live in. It is not the reality of most people have to endure on a daily basis. Hopefully they will also understand that these tactics are being used at home because they have seen it so successful elsewhere in other sovereign states whose people aren't allowed to live in a world which resembles reality because they could improve it. By addressing that reality, the last thing the U.S. wants anyone in its client states to do. Black, white, and saying so. It's always the same story. The winners are the good and the losers all bad. Recalling the crimes the Union committed during the Civil War, I cringe at the syrupy repetitiveness of the condescension wielded at the Southern heritage. The Confederacy's crimes have been extensively cataloged since the War of Secession. However, we never hear much about General Sherman or what he did in the Savannah Valley of Virginia and in the Deep South, Georgia, and South Carolina, some of the worst war crimes in history. And you know what? He's right. You gotta look up the burning of Atlanta. That was horrendous and unacceptable. This corollary of this presentation is that all reasonable people must agree with the winning side and automatically accept what it does show they are reasonable. If they don't, they are bad people. Just like millions of Syrians who support Assad or the millions who continue supporting people the U.S. was happy to assist 5 minutes ago, but has suddenly changed its almighty, all-knowing mind about. Robert E. Lee freed his slaves, unlike Union General Ulysses S. Grant. Grant's excuse was keeping his was that good help is hard to find. It is a sort of attitude now condemned by the official U.S. and as a reason for destroying the Southern heritage, which is represented by Lee, not Grant. The problem the official U.S. has with the South is not it advocated retaining slavery, as we can see how the people in U.S. allied countries are treated today. It is that it advocated and still does advocate states' rights. The Civil War resulted in the federal government removing from some of the right states had to run their own affairs. These rights were guaranteed by the Constitution and existed because all the U.S. states were theoretically independent countries which chose either voluntary or via coercion. I hope I pronounced these words right. To join this union of states is the same way of the cantons of Switzerland and city-states of Germany and Italy once did. We have a situation at present in which many state governments are at odds with the President of the United States, whichever party controls them. If these states exercise their rights, there are many ways in which they can impede the President. Like other democratic rulers, he ultimately has to rule by consent, and not a lot of that is flowing his way right now. Trump has a number of comments supporting the racists who are threatening people in Charlottesville, but equating states' rights with racism. However, much some Southern politicians did that themselves. Simply support the official line from supporting racism. Trump is facilitating further efforts to stamp out potential dissent. Maybe has Never heard of Tito's Yugoslavia, but if he wants to know where that leads, he need only look there. Truth, good truth, bad opinions. Sherman, Sheridan, and Grant were all war criminals. Despite being the three best generals the North had, the contemporary problems of Northern Ireland remained because both sides used violence to get their way, but only one was officially protected. Similarly, that most racist of states. Apartheid-era South Africa ended up the way because the British, their colonial masons, herded all the Boers into concentration camps at the turn of the 20th century. No one was going to listen to British pleas for racial tolerance when this was the tolerance displayed towards the families of future apartheid supporters. So you see that. The Boers, they're like the Dutch descent group. White folks. Okay? Pale white folks were being in these going to concentration camps. So all you folks out there calling the white supremacy, all that, you know what? Listen. That's all I gotta say. Despite this, the U.S. is determined to stamp out the heritage of millions of its own citizens, which is based on exerting their legal rights on the ground of political correctness. Even the furor surrounding these protests is being used for this purpose, to present this as a new issue. There are, of course, many reasons why the official U.S. doesn't want attention being drawn to how consistently it has pursued the same policies. In the 1950s, the popular TV Gary Ghost was canceled after one season because the sponsors considered it inappropriate to show an irregular Confederate cavalry officer as a man of honor fighting a lost cause. The series was based on a true story of Major John Singleton Mosby, a Virginia officer in the Confederate Army whose cunning and stealth had earned him the nickname Gray Ghost. Walt Disney later made a movie of his exploits without anyone making a big deal out of it. But in the era of Red Scares and nuclear standoffs, putting a human face on the war between the states ran the risk of making their enemies human and thus leading to question what the U.S. government told them about them. Now, the world is facing a similar nuclear threat from communist North Korea. If it can get a hold on all the technology it needs, therefore, contemporary movies, such as those describing the Battle of New Market, Virginia, also have passed the litmus test of political correctness. For now, they are being countered by others which are mysteriously being funded, e.g. Field of Lost Shoes, which is basically a recruitment film for the Virginia Military Academy, VMI. Presumably, we told that this funding came from the same concerned citizens who allegedly backed Michael Moore Hates America when the filmmakers asked the documentaries gained a global following. Interesting, right? We'll continue on here. Identity and the card. If someone expects to identify a particular viewpoint, expresses it, a common riposte is, well, you would say that, wouldn't you? You can expect immigrants to support immigration. You can expect junkies to support the decriminalization of drugs. There is no more reason to think that anyone expressing these views is more venal than those who express a more acceptable line, which equally serves their own interests in some ways. But if you reduce everything to identify politics, all other considerations go out the window. The term identity politics refers to the discussion of and politicking around issues pertaining to an individual's personal identity rather than the national or global issues. Those focused on gender issues, religious and cultural issues, and such like are usually accused of only being interested in such matters for narrow personal gain, regardless of the wider benefits their suggested actions might bring. Yet, Trump and Obama both play the same card to get elected. Hillary tried to do the same, hoping she would capture the women's vote. This is why This is why it is again in vogue in the U.S. to be white and male, working class, a bit xenophobia and not closely aligned with the previously mentioned identity. If it's okay for one side, despite being officially frowned upon, it merely emboldens the other side to do the same. Lots of monuments to even more distasteful men than Confederate war heroes can be found in America. Andrew Jackson is routinely memorialized through the perspective of the Native Americans, those who have the right to be there. He remains feminine. Jackson routinely called Indian savages and people of mixed heritage half-breeds, was unshakable in his convictions that Indians should be removed from the South, and followed through with that. If he's a great American and those who don't agree with him are simply indulging in identity politics. They explain why so many Americans can't even find allied countries on a map. What do you think what I pay for? It is highly likely that many of those protests at Charlottesville, Boston, and elsewhere have financial and not ideological motivation for being there. Just walking there as a body. You know? After all, it is the U.S. which provides those fancy cars to the families of the terrorists. It trains in Pankasi, George in Georgia. This standoff and the accompanying violence and murder are part of a larger plan to polarize America, which makes everyone a venal player of identity politics and thus prevent any view actually being heard. As David Grimm of the Atlantic stated in a recent article, though plenty of observers are disgusted by the president's validation of racist protesters, and no one should be surprised or take it as a spontaneous whim. It was one of the most cogent, precise, and enduring case as he might made as a politician. So cogent, in fact, that he is unlikely to have made it without help. Given the official U.S. policy for so long, Trump cannot help but be surrounded by people whose jobs depend on offering such assistance. If you say there's a fault on both sides at Charlottesville and elsewhere, you acknowledge there are two sides. When did you last hear the U.S. talk about two sides when referring to its own partners? As the government of a different country with different traditions and political imperatives agrees with the U.S. in general, there is only one side. The other side of those individuals who don't agree with us, who don't agree with the U.S., and those people are only playing identity politics, not caring about the rest of humanity as the U.S. does. When the U.S. can be acting in the name of its own people, there are not both sides. Only one side, that of the democratic, caring, automatically right side exists. Now the U.S. is determined to ensure that the population is divided into sides so that only the official view, that which is above, identity politics, is heard. Americans may not see what is going on, but this is a very familiar scenario to millions of other people who definitely want the U.S. to be their friend and then have to suffer the consequence. Very interesting, because he made some valid points in these areas, and of course imperialism, etc. And people got, like I said, you can't. A lot of folks have that tunnel vision. They get caught, hook, line, and sinker. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm going to do. Just go out there, and that's a real shame. This is why you can't get distracted. You can't look at face value. Focus on the fine print. And it's true about Robert E. Lee did free his slaves. So yeah, he may have owned them, but he freed them when he had to go to war. But and I know with Stonewall Jackson, I think he was against it too. So he was against slavery as well. How come Grant got it? And they fought over slavery, but what happened? It's okay. Exceptional. He can't do it, but I can. You know. So this is why, my friends, when you study history, you're going to remove these circumstances because you're offended. You better look at every single element in your surroundings and learn about these characters. Okay, so this is what you have to really focus on. And whatever you do, don't get duped, don't get gladiated, don't get swindled on getting involved in a conflict which is spread like cancer about the so-called civil war, which none of us want. Intellectual ammunition is the way to do it. Not screaming and hollering, calling them a fascist, you don't even know the person. And vice versa. Totally retarded, unacceptable, unmeritable. Education is key, knowledge is power, and ignorance is enslavement. So, I'll be right back. Okay, so the next ring I'm going to be addressing here came from Land Destroyer. This is by Tony Carlucci. And this one's entitled Venezuela's West's Battle Against Multipolarism Reaches Far. And came out yesterday, to be exact. As it reads, the battle between the established unipopular international order dominated by Wall Street, Washington, and London had emerging multipolar order appears fixated on Eastern Europe, Middle East, and across the entirety of Asia. Overextends to virtually every corner of the globe, and the competition in the Arctic, politically motivated controversies in Earth orbit. The South American nation of Venezuela also seems far removed from this ongoing competition, resulting in the world's hotspot in the Middle East. Central and Asia, Middle East, Central and Asia, but the fate on this besieged nation is directly linked to the rest of the world, either contributing an emerging multipolar world order or providing sanctuary and legitimacy to the established unipolar order currently dominated by Wall Street, Washington, and London. The nation has been the target of U.S.-backed subversions for decades. This latest iteration of American interference began with the rise of Venezuelan power, President Hugo Chavez, and a failed U.S.-backed coup in 2002 organized to oust him and place a U.S.-controlled client regime in power. Venezuela's opposition and U.S.-backed agitators. Many of those in the failed 2002 coup are now leading the U.S.-backed protests in the streets in a bid to overthrow the government of President Nicolas Maduro, who succeeded Chavez after his death in 2013. The opposition includes former President of Qatar, Enrique Calabrese-Landowski, who heads Primero Justice First, which co-founded the Leopoldo Lopez, Julio Borges, who, like Landowski, had been backed for nearly a decade by the U.S. Department. Primero Justice and the network of foreign-funded NGOs that supported it have been recipients of both direct and indirect foreign support for at least just as long. All three founders are U.S.-educated, Landowski having attended the New York Club University. Spanish, okay? Julio Borges attending Boston College and Oxford, and Leopoldo Lopez, who attended Harvard Kennedy School of Government, KSG, of which he is considered the alumni of. The Harvard Kennedy School, which is hosted by the notorious Belfer Center, includes, following the faculty and alumni of Lopez, co-founder of the U.S.-backed opposition in Venezuela. J.P. Holdren, Samantha Power, Lawrence Summers, Robert Zoliak, all as faculty, as well as Ban Ki-moon in 84, Paul Bacher, 51, Robert Kagan, 91, Bill O'Reilly, 96, Klaus Schwab, 67, and literally hundreds of seniors, ambassadors, and administrators of Wall Street and London current global spanning international order. Wow. That's an interesting little history there, huh? I learned something today. Good grief. Wow. Harvard's Kennedy School of Government is one of several universities that formed the foundation of both creating corporate financial-driven international policy as well as cultivating legions of administrators who execute it. This includes creating cadres of individuals to constitute Wall Street and Washington's client regime around the world. Venezuela's problem, like other target states, is U.S. addition, not socialism. If it is true, Venezuela is deemed a socialist nation, and its policy of heavily centralizing the economy has not only failed to elevate that many long-standing socioeconomic conflicts inflicting Venezuela's society, but has also created an ample vector for Wall Street and Washington's meddling. By placing all of Venezuela's proverbial eggs in one centralized basket, the United States, through the use of various well-known geopolitical and economic tools, has managed to knock out that basket from the government in Caracas' hand. And now is using this well-funded organization, well-funded and organized opposition to crush whatever eggs survive the fall. Unfortunately for Venezuela, the Western political landscape is so deeply rooted in blind, poorly developed political ideology. Practical geopolitical and geostrategic analysts have been overlooked across both traditional and alternative media platforms, and instead many, including opponents of U.S.-backed collapse of the socialist regime, Venezuelan government at the hands of the free market protesters. In reality, they are cheering on yet another episode on U.S.-backed regime change, wrapped in a protective layer of ideological, political, and economic rhetoric to justify other unjustifiable, extraterritorial meddling, interference, chaos, division, and destruction. Like they probably get their hands everywhere they don't belong, right? Venezuela's placed within the unipolar, multipolar world. Depending on the ultimate fate of the Venezuelan government, the success of U.S.-backed proxies, and the ability of Venezuela to reconstruct itself after decades of foreign-backed subversion, Venezuela can either enhance or set back the emerging multipolar world order. Regardless of Venezuela's fate, and when the government of Caracas is toppled, the U.S.-led unipolar international order will benefit. The elimination of competition, even at a cost creating a center of regional destabilization, is considered favorable versus allowing a bastion of alternative social, economic, and geopolitical power to persist. And in many ways, the creation of a regional center of destabilization may help the U.S. create synergies between the chaos it is fostering in Venezuela and the neighboring South and Central American nations. The U.S. has unlike target for geopolitical coercion and or regime change for Russia, China, other nations of threats, and even emerging economies across the Southeast Asia and Central Asia. The loss of Venezuela as by means of counterbalance to U.S. hegemony both in the region of the Americas and globally will allow the U.S. to concentrate more resources toward remaining alternative centers of geopolitical and economic power seek to target. This is not the nature of Venezuela's socialist government. It is the focus of U.S. effort and is what defines the consequence of either U.S. success or failure regarding regime change in Caracas. And a government, socialist or otherwise, operating outside of Wall Street, Washington, and London's sphere of influence is a target. Competition, not ideology, defines and drives Western foreign policy. And for those who oppose this policy, it must be practical, geopolitical, and geostrategic analysts that defines conclusions, and of course of action. Not the ideological debate. The U.S. itself is used as a pretext, as a rhetorical cover to justify its vast regime change project. Venezuela may be geographically far removed from the focal point of the great multipolar struggle, but the understanding how it fits into conflicts raging in Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and across Asia illustrates just how encompassing the international order's reach and ambitions really are, and how deadly dangerous they are to global peace, security, and stability. Ooh, yeah. So we have these multinational corporations running the world. It can get really damn ugly. I see this happening everywhere, even in local cities in the United States as well. It is not too dandy. I've been saying this for a long period of time. The people in Venezuela that make their own decisions shouldn't be interfered by agitators, opposition groups that are financed by from foreign nations. They gotta handle their deals themselves. Sometimes you have economic hijack to interfere with their affairs and their visions. I'm not, even me, people know me well enough. I'm not crazy about government as a whole, but you gotta let the people decide, and you gotta stay vigilant as well. This has to end of U.S. interfering with foreign nations or corporations interfering with countries' affairs. I agree with it. So it has to stop. Alright. So I'm going to do one more here. And this one here from Bob Livingston's Alerts, entitled It is entitled Globalists Use Insane Leftists and Provocateurs to Push Conservatives Towards Totalitarianism by Brandon Smith. The false left-right paradigm is often misunderstood concept. Many people who are aware of it sometimes wrongly assume that it asserts the claim that there is no left or right political paradigm. It is all a farce. This is incorrect. In the Reagan society, there is indeed a political spectrum among general populists and socialism, communism left, conservatism, free market, individualism right. Each citizen sits somewhere on a scale between these two dynamics. The left-right spectrum is in fact real for the average person. We do not find a false paradigm until we examine the beliefs and behaviors of the elitists and political classes. For many banking oligarchs and high-level politicians, there is no loyalty to a particular party or an identifiable left-right ideology. Many of these people are happy to explore both sides of the spectrum to achieve the goals of globalism, a separate ideology that doesn't really serve the interests of groups and on the left or the right. This is to say, globalists pretend as if they care about one side or the other on occasion, but in truth they could not care less about the success of either. They only care about the success of their own elitist club. This reality also tends to apply to national loyalty as well. Do not carry ideological love for any particular nation or culture. They are more than happy to sacrifice and sabotage country if the action will gain them greater power or centralization in return. The globalist is only Democratic or Republican, or American or Russian or Chinese or European, etc. Insofar the label gets them something that they want. The reason globalists and the people that work for them adopt certain labels is because though they can act as gatekeepers and better manipulate the masses. The hot button issue of the week provides us with the case in point. The organizers of the Unite the Right group during the Charlottesville circuit, which ended in one death and numerous injured, happened to be an ideological playmate of the extreme left. Only a year ago, Jason Kessler seemed to come out of nowhere as a leading figure in the white identity or white nationalist movement in 2017. But in 2016, he was an avid supporter of Barack Obama, and before that, an active champion of the Wall Street Occupy Wall Street movement. I suppose anyone can change their ideological worldview over time, but I'm certainly not stupid enough to believe that Jason Kessler went from hardcore leftist to white nationalist in less than a year. Though it cannot be proven conclusively that Kessler is a provocateur, he certainly idolized the position. Kessler quoted his own blog on December 12, 2015, now shut down but archived, as stating, "I can't think of any occupation I admire more than a professional provocateur who has the courage and self-determination to court controversy despite the slings and the arrows of the world." Sounds like an opportunist to me, right? Yep. This is not the first time white nationalists have been exploited by agent provocateurs. It is certainly not for the first time white nationalists have been discovered to be working directly for the federal government. Ku Klux Klan leader Bill Wilkinson openly admitted to being an FBI informant and cooperator in 1981. Hal Turner, a white supremacist radio personality notorious for calling for the death of judges and lawmakers, turned out to be a provocateur paid by the FBI to drum up extremism. He was exposed in 2009 after his arrest led to his admission that almost everything he did was at the behest of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Why would the government seek to instigate white nationalist groups into violence? Well, have you examined the larger narrative here? Anti-conservative propaganda have been overwhelmingly one track over the past several years. If you're well educated on activities of deceit machines like the Southern Poverty Law Center, you understand that the thrust of all their operations has been to tie white nationalism directly to liberal organizations, even though there is no connection. I call this guilt by false association, all the words of which are. Keep in mind that this SPLC cooperates closely with government agencies like DHS as their working group to counter violent extremism, to create profiling techniques to identify right-wing extremists. Meaning, their skewed propaganda is often what the media and government agencies use as a reference when writing articles or implementing policies. Sorry about that. The SPLC is inseparable from the mainstream media and the government agendas dealing with conservatives in order to justify the madness and violence of the left. In recent months, it is more important than ever for the establishment to maintain the lie that conservatives are often violent racists and fascists that need to be destroyed. Propaganda alone is really enough to make such notions stick in the public consciousness. Sometimes the provocateurs are needed to stir the pot. However, it's the only half of the equation of the American Civil War being engineered before our eyes. In my article, Social Justice Cult Should Blame Itself for the Rise of Trump, published in August 2016, I warned that Trump would indeed win the presidential election and that this would actually serve the interests of the establishment's elite. In the article, I outlined the classic division that globalists have used for decades to divide and conquer societies, as well as control instability and even geopolitical conflicts. Namely, the communist versus the fascist division. Yeah, both freedom haters, right? They hate liberty. Liberty-hating groups. The political left in the U.S. has gone full retard, as they said, and it is my belief that this is by design. The current behavior of SJW groups, such as groups like Antifa, is similar in numerous ways of the actions of Maoists in China during the Cultural Revolution. Maoists sought to erase all vestiges of China's imperialist history in a wave of violence that resulted in destruction of priceless pieces of Chinese historical significance and the prosecution of political opponents. This unchecked fervor accumulated in mass killing of anyone be found a heretic of the new social justice religion. The only group to truly believe in the rapid social outburst was Mao and the elites of China's political establishment. See, like Jim Jones syndrome, you can say, right? The left's war against Confederate statues is not about slavery and is certainly not about respect for life. If that were the case, they would have abolished the shooting of the Congressman Steve Scalzi by the left as much as they wailed about killing of Heather here by white nationalists. Yeah, a lot of doublespeak. Okay, one of those statues glorify slavery in any way. They merely represent a piece of America's past, which is far more complex and poorly educated SJW lunatics are able to comprehend. Of course, they don't care about real history. They only care about the issues of Confederate statues as a means by which they can implement destruction of American cultural heritage and predominantly conservative and ideas. So you gotta look at everything the bigger picture. Ripping, destroying heritage, history, culture, etc. This is just an example. We go along here. What the left wants to start with Confederate statues because it's the easiest for them to rationalize to the public, then move on to the founding fathers, then to the Constitution around their assault or the erasure of conservative thought altogether. What the globalists want is to encourage leftists to pursue this goal, but not necessarily with the expectation that they will succeed. In fact, the globalists are about to throw the leftists to the wolves. That means you're just garbage today, going to be used and tossed like dirty laundry. Remember the well aware of my position on the Trump presidency. I said before this election, I continue to hold my prediction to this day. Trump is either a patsy and a scapegoat for the inevitable economic and social crisis that has been brewing with America for years, or he is the Pied Piper. Either way, conservatives are being lashed to the hull of Trump's Titanic, and when it sinks, we're all supposed to go down with it. The social justice criticism of leftists, growing ever more violent and illogical, is meant to push conservatives not just into the arms of the Trump White House, but it's also meant to push us towards a more totalitarian mindset. The more aggressive the left becomes, the more inclined the right will be used government as a weapon to pulverize them with an iron fist. This is exactly what globalists want. For once conservatives abandon our constitutional principles in the name of defeating the left, we will become the monster we have always sought to defend against. We have lost the long game, and the globalists will have us exactly where they want us. Communism and fascism are the two sides of the same coin. Both ideologies were originally developed and funded by international banks and conglomerates in the early 20th century. For undeniable evidence of this, I recommend reading the works of Antony Sutton, including Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution, as well as Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler. Hey! Communism is a totalitarian collectivist model based on fraudulent premise that the strongest and the most successful in society must be diminished or erased in order to elevate the weak and unsuccessful, all based on the assumption that the strong must have risen to their position through oppression and exploitation. Through this erasure, they hope to create equality. Fascism, the totalitarian collectivist model based on fraudulent premise that the weak and unsuccessful in society must be diminished or erased because they are parasitic drain on the strong. Both rely heavily on the power of government, the blind servitude of the majority, and the use of terror to achieve their goals. Neither of these systems is compatible with conservative philosophy, and both of them act as a catalyst for greater centralization and less freedom, which the globalists benefit greatly from. In fact, if you believe in the force of big government and collectivist mindset, then you cannot call yourself a conservative. The two worldviews are mutually exclusive. Conservatives, though, be corrupted just like anyone else. In the case of the present day, conservatives are being stabbed with 1,000 needles by the left, luring us into a mindset of vengeance and rage. We are also being falsely associated with white nationalist movement. Many of them operate by agent provocateurs that do often promote fascism as it's some kind of misunderstood auxiliary of stability and utopia. I think it is clear that regardless who wins, fascist communists, conservatives are the primary target. If something like that happened with the Weimar Republic of Germany when they joined forces, communists and Nazis, and they took out the Socialist Democratic Party of Germany. And thereafter, the Nazis kicked the communists to the curb and Hitler got at the power. I will continue on here. It is my view that the left is a cannon fodder in this agenda. They are being wielded like a blunt instrument, a battering ram composed of useful idiots, a buzzing of flies and mosquitoes. Conservatives are being encouraged to act against constitutional values in order to stop this threat. The time is coming when we will have to make a choice. Stand by our values and fight the left the hard way, or abandon our values and serve the globalists by adopting their methods of government totalitarianism. It is my hope that enough of us will stand by the Constitution and conscience in this schizophrenic era and disrupt the tide of madness before they erode our nation completely. Interesting, great point there. It does make sense. But one thing about these two little movements, fascism and Nazi and communism, what they have in common, they hate liberty. It's pretty self-explanatory. Collectivism, they want to, like one side wanted to get rid of the strong, and the other side just on the weak. Like I said, so this is a real shame, and people got to look at things across the board instead of being one-sided. This was why I may repeat myself. I was very disappointed how some people interacted with this whole terrible event that happened in Charlottesville. They want to blame one side. I don't see it that way. And based on my report, I've been very consistent at it. So do what's right. Intellectual ammunition to counter these parasites or these movements, because it is one of the dangerous things that can really divide folks and be ruled like peons. Hopefully that won't be the case. So whatever you folks do, please remain vigilant, not just the United States, but the world. Well, I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share through your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or something that's interesting you may want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondence with the forum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, Theme.life, Minds.com, FutureNet.club, or Patreon.com/LookYourLuck3, 3 eyes altogether. If you want to be a patron, donor, all that would be awesome. In addition, you can email me at lookyourlucknumber3@gmail.com, or if you encrypted folks, lookyourlucknumbers03@protonmail.com. Woo, yeah, I didn't know it'd be a little bit over an hour. Hopefully you enjoy the show. And once again, thank you for your time. But always remember that the demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourself. Keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.